think that Christianity is the most ridiculous belief on the planet, and yet I still believe it.
Growing up, I lived in a Christian home, and to be honest, I don't think that we were a Christian home, my family, until my mom got baptized when I was, I think, 9 years old. And so we started going to church regularly, and by the time I was 12, I was baptized at MCC. When I was 14, I listened to this sermon by Pastor Paul. He was the youth pastor at the church I went to. And I felt like when I heard him talk about if you wanted to be a Christian, if you wanted to walk with God, like how your life could just be great and how you could have all these wonderful gifts that God gave you. And I was very young at the time, and I kind of understood it and I kind of did not understand it. But I knew that I did not want to be a sinner, and I knew that I didn't want to be in hell. And that's just kind of how I thought, and I was like, okay, I choose God. But I remember that day in church, and I remember thinking, like, I could feel something. I could feel this change in me, and I accepted Christ that day. And I knew that I was going to live a better life, and I was going to become a better Christian. And all through high school, I went to church. My family and we went to every Christmas service, Easter service, everything. And I think that the strongest part of my relationship with God was my prayer. I prayed to God every night, and I would look out my window, and I just knew He was there listening to me. And I just knew that nothing could go wrong when I had Him by my side.
My mom grew up in a more religious household than my dad. My dad was, I guess, technically Christian. They celebrated Christian holidays, but they were never a church-going group. I think a lot of it was me just trying to feel my way out, see what was there, and you know, at the beginning when I was being involved in religious groups, you know, CCD kind of thing, I treated it like it was just a regular class that you would take at school. So it was never something really that serious for me. And when I finally got the decision to, you know, decide, do I want to go to church? Do I want to, you know, it was around the time when I was going to be confirmed. Did I want to do that? I decided it probably wasn't right for me. It wasn't something, you know, deep down that I knew I wanted. And that started, I guess, about 6 years of me just floating around, having no idea what's going on out there kind of thing.
When I went to college, I still had that same mindset, but I could tell that things were changing and I was in a new environment. And I started hanging around people that were ungodly, that chose drinking, sex, drugs over everything else. And I started to fall into that trap. And I turned my back on God fully. And I said, I don't want that life. I don't want to walk next to God because I'm not really sure where it goes, but I do know that if I'm over here with these people that like me for a moment or two, I know that I can have instant happiness, or at least for a little. And I just became this party animal that drank all the time. I just became someone I thought I never could be. And I just remember thinking, like, that I chose the right way. And in the weirdest way, I'm like, yeah, like, you know, I have all these friends and people text me all the time and they want to know where the party's at, and that I'm just living this crazy wild life, and people know it and they want to hear my stories of my nights. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And then everything else started to fall around me. My schoolwork started to go down. My family, I did not have a good relationship with them. I didn't really know my sister anymore because I never kept in contact with her. I just felt like everything was just falling apart, and I thought I could fix it.
It's the most ridiculous belief on the planet, and yet also the most beautiful. Because God does things really different from people. He created a planet and he created people, and he knew we were going to mess up. Nobody creates something that they know is going to be a mess. He chose a people to be his own. They turned their back on him a number of times. Well, more than a number of times. And he kept coming back to them. Nobody keeps coming back to somebody that turns their back on you. That's just ridiculous.
Started going to some ultimate Frisbee games with Dan Meyer, who invited me, and I met the inner workings of Ignite, Sean Braley, Will Basil, etc. And it allowed me to ease my way into that. Dan kept inviting me to Ignite, and for the first couple of times it was busy with something, and it was usually an excuse that had no backing. I was just a little nervous about making that kind of decision, and when I finally decided that it was time for me to go, I put my trust in another friend of mine, Chad Troyan, and see if he would go with Dan and myself, and it ended up being a big difference. Not right away. It took me a while before I was able to fully accept Christ in my life, but it was definitely that big step that I needed to head in that direction.
I remember actually seeing Jesse out, and we started talking again and just texting randomly about hanging out. And I remember her asking me if I wanted to go to Ignite, and she said it was this youth group at RC3. And so she brought me in, and the way she did it was just, Kristen, do you want to come? Like, it was not forced at all. And I think that people need that sometimes. People need just someone being like, hey, you should come. That's all it takes, really. Like, someone like me was just waiting for someone like her to come into my life. And God did that on purpose, for sure. And so I started coming to Ignite and just being around all these people that were passionate about God. And I remember that feeling when I was younger, and remembering that I had thrown that away just for fun. And I read this passage in James chapter 4, verse 3 through 8. And it says, "You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. You adulterous people. Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you suppose it is to no purpose that the scripture says, 'He yearns jealousy over the Spirit that he has made to dwell in us, but he gives us more grace.' Therefore it says, 'God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded.'"
God's Son, Jesus, lived a perfect life. Nobody can live a perfect life. And yet, Jesus did. That's ridiculous. Because of all of the crazy things that happened in the Bible, all of the ridiculous things that happened in the Bible, Christianity is also one of the most beautiful belief systems on the planet. Because we know that Jesus walked this earth, which means that he experienced everything that we experience on a day-to-day basis.
I started coming to RC3. I started surrounding myself with great people who cared about me, and I started to feel this feeling of me caring for them. And throughout college, I didn't really care for anyone but myself. And people ask me how I'm doing, how I like work, and it's just crazy because I never had that connection with anyone else. I do know that God has brought me here for a purpose, and that these people are meant to be in my life, and that I love them, and that I hope they know that they have definitely helped me in my walk with Christ.